Okay, let's get started. Welcome to another CreditorWatch webinar, this time the Small Business Risk Review, which we run on a quarterly basis. So we'll be looking at Q1 2019, so Jan, Feb and March just gone. My name's Patrick Coughlin and I'm the CEO at CreditorWatch. And a little few house items to go through first. Obviously, for those who've joined us, you're very much aware, Q&A, we encourage this. Please do ask questions along the way. We have got the ability to ask and answer questions as we go. We've got some people standing by to assist. So in the question box within the GoToWebinar control panel, there is a Q&A section there. Please feel free to use it. If we don't get back to you straight away or during the webinar, we will get back to you soon after, so don't think that we're ignoring you. As always, we're recording the webinar, so we'll send that through as well as the slides, and I will endeavour to have this wrapped up by 1 o'clock so you've got time for some lunch or to get to your next meeting. A little bit about CreditorWatch, Australia's leading and most innovative commercial credit reporting bureau with over 50,000 customers, a wide variety of credit management tools, from credit reporting, an online application, so the things that you sort of need to onboard a new customer, through to ongoing credit management using alerts and monitoring. So find out when your existing customers get into financial difficulty or start having adverse events occur to them. And then a few other tools in there that obviously touched on quite a bit in the past. I won't go through it too much. However, if you're an existing or existing customer interested in those other items, please do get in contact with us. If you're not a customer, welcome. Thank you for joining us. We're always here to help, so please feel free to reach out and we can organise demonstrations in person to person, face to face, or obviously we can do it on a video conference as well. So a little bit about the Small Business Risk Review for those of you who have not joined us for previous ones. As I mentioned, it's a quarterly analysis that we do, and we're aggregating data from a wide variety of sources, including ASIC, Australian Financial Services, AFSA, which is the government body that looks after PPSR and bankruptcy, and the Australian Business Register as well. Courts around Australia, insolvency notices, debt collection notices that we capture, though I don't believe I touch on it this particular webinar, and of course payment defaults and trade payment information. We recently ingested a huge amount of industry codes, ASIC codes, and added them to our credit reports within CreditorWatch. So hopefully what we'll start to be able to do from next Small Business Risk Review onwards is start to provide a little bit of industry data as well, and include that into our reports around court actions, payment defaults, and trade payment information, so we can get a little bit more granular and give you guys a little bit more information rather than the high level sort of state by state or Australian sort of statistics themselves. Make it hopefully a little bit more meaningful, and start to give you a better understanding of how you're performing in your industry compared to how our other customers are performing in that particular industry that you operate in. So I guess one question to kick us off is, how would you rate the trading conditions last quarter? Now, I really like getting these particular poll questions answered in the Small Business Risk Review webinars. It's been, for me, an interesting sort of 6 months. I feel like a lot of people are in a holding pattern. So I think we will start to see either positive or negative moves probably in the second half of the year, once we have a little bit more clarity on who will actually be leading the country, and what sort of job they get off to in that first sort of 100 days, so to speak. All right, so thank you to those who contributed there. To be honest, this doesn't surprise me much at all. Everyone that we speak to, be it customers or partners, suppliers, that sort of thing, even friends who are running businesses themselves, everyone is kind of, treading water, so to speak. And I think this is quite indicative of it. Almost 50% of you, 45% of you are neutral, and then, the balance is either positive or negative. So it's probably quite dependent on, the state that you're in and also the industry. I was going to add another one in here just to ask how you're feeling about the sort of next 6 to 12 months. If you wanted to add that in the question box, that'd be great, because I'd love to hear it from you. But yeah, the feedback I'm certainly getting from around the place is, obviously there's the property downturn, and that affects most people out there. However, from a commercial, business sentiments, there isn't much to go off unless you're really affected in a specific industry. I think, the government isn't really doing much. They're almost in caretaker mode, essentially. The budget hasn't really, opened up people to being, very positive or negative about it. It was quite safe, I think. So it'll be really interesting to see once the election is called and the results come in, what that looks like afterwards. I think people are kind of been holding off on that election for, sort of 6 to 12 months now. So thank you to that. Anyway, that's my little ramble about what we're seeing, what I'm feeling based on my feedback of people in the next, sort of 6 to 12 months. But next time I'll get that poll question up there for you. But in the meantime, you can put it in that question box. So before I jump into Queensland, I tinkered with putting a doom and gloom slide up. Looking at the results, you'll see why. It does feel, when we look at just these particular stats and a few other ones as well that I'll read through from other organisations like Xero, the Small Insights Report, and also the Australian Small and Family Enterprise Ombudsman, who've obviously been extremely active in the media, in the market of late, representing small businesses and pushing to get larger organisations to pay within 30 days. Everything feels quite doom and gloom, and I think if we look at Queensland, they have had the largest increase in court actions across all of the states, I believe. And a big jump as well in the dollar amount of those. So that is, what we typically see is quite worrying. And you find that a large increase in court actions then results in a large increase in winding ups and ultimately administration. So it'll be really interesting to see if these sort of stats do carry along. New South Wales as well. So that's the second quarter that we've seen a big jump. 15% increase in the number of court actions, 21% in the dollar value of those particular ones. If we go back to the quarter Q1 2018 and compare that to 2017, there was actually a big decrease, and it had been, sort of 4 or 5 quarters in a row of decreases. So there was always going to be a large jump here eventually. What that will mean in the coming sort of quarter, 6 months, you certainly want to be keeping a closer eye on organisations or customers that you're doing business with in New South Wales, in Queensland, and of course in the other states as well, because we are seeing significant increases across the board. South Australia, again, another big increase off the back of their Q4 increase as well. So you could see why I was sort of tinkering with it, but it doesn't exactly reflect how I think, what we're seeing in the market and what our customers are responding to us when we ask them, and how they're communicating to us how they feel. We'll look at the defaults as well, and there has been a jump in the defaults, but it's quite interesting that the stats seem to be a lot more pessimistic and dire than what people are naturally feeling out there and responding to us. Looking at Victoria, third quarter in a row where we've had a decent increase in the number of court actions and dollar amounts as well. So Queensland, Victoria, South Australia, and New South Wales, all of them certainly starting to feel it from a court action point of view. WA is in a fairly good position there. Only a 15% increase after a number of reductions over the past 3 quarters, which is nice to see. So if we just have a look at all of them together, you can see that there are significantly big jumps across the major states. Touching on, the Xero Small Business Insights report that they released, the big one for us that we pulled out of there was that the fact that only 50% of businesses were cash flow positive in January. Now, we know that January, December, that period is certainly a slow period for most businesses. Even if you're in retail, you've obviously collected, if you're in retail, you're collecting a lot of cash, which is great because you see a big uptick in your sales. However, for those of you who are operating on a credit point of view, issuing invoices, trying to collect over that December, January period is extremely difficult. So certainly something to take out there. 50% of businesses cash flow positive in January 2019, according to Xero. Small Business Insights, looking at January's business conditions, they're suggesting 36 days for a small business to be paid on an invoice with a 30-day term in January, almost a week late. That's actually not too bad. I think, we've seen over the years anything sort of under 40 days is quite a good effort. But everyone needs to be doing a little bit more, embracing technology to get paid sooner. Small businesses, we know, are generally the poorest when it comes to credit management. A lot of credit gets issued on a handshake or on trust because they're not necessarily desperate for a sale, but they're conscious of the fact that they don't want to turn a sale down. And then when it comes to a collection, it's often quite reactive. It's the owner or the MD, so to speak, or their partner, doing the books on a weekly or a monthly basis, and often they're only looking at stuff that's in that 60 to 90 day bucket in their age trial balance. Very, very reactive, and go, oh, it's probably time I sent a reminder, a gentle reminder that could you please pay that invoice that's now 90 days overdue. Small businesses certainly seem to be a lot more aware of the fact that outstanding debts that are that old have a serious impact on their cash flow, and they're starting to embrace the technologies that are out there, particularly through the likes of Xero and MYOB and CreditorWatch, obviously. But certainly plenty more to do in that space. If we look at the new report into late payment times that was released by that Small and Family Enterprise Ombudsman, found Australia's largest businesses have been reluctant to disclose how quickly they actually pay SME suppliers, despite promising to fulfill invoices within fewer than 30 days. So a lot of those larger organisations said, yeah, we agree we should be paying SME suppliers. A couple of months have gone by, 24-hour media cycle. They know that sort of disappears. However, fortunately, the Ombudsman has chased them back up and said, well, come on, show us how you're paying. All of them, or a big chunk of them, I should say, very reluctant to actually disclose how they're paying those SMEs, even if it is put in their terms and conditions. The report itself interviewed 2,400 SMEs and the data from more than 1,000 big businesses, and found that the promises rarely ring through. They themselves found it takes an average of 36.7 days for small businesses to get paid by large firms. So fairly similar to the Small Insights report that I mentioned earlier. So this is the first time I've put together this sort of graph of payment defaults. Now, for obvious reasons, I've removed the actual numbers. I just wanted to be able to give you an idea of the trend that we're seeing. So the grey line there are our members or customers. Keep in mind we certainly are a fairly fast growing business. So they're new customers every month that we're bringing on. That's not the net number of customers that we have or the total number of customers. That's new customers that we're bringing on every month. So you can see that we are bringing on more and more new customers. And while the lines around value, which is the orange one there and the blue one, volume, follow it, we certainly have seen a significant uptick since sort of mid or late November there, where it dropped off a bit. It's certainly come up from there. If we look at the last 2 quarters, so sort of September through to now, huge increases. Now that is off the back of some innovation and technology changes we made within CreditorWatch to make it easier for our customers to register defaults within their system. So we've actually seen the number of defaults being registered double as a result of those changes, and that has been maintained, and it's starting to grow from there. So, for example, if we were having, on average, 1,000 defaults registered a month, we're actually now seeing 2,000 plus being registered. So, this is more of a graph for you to have a think about, and to make your own conclusions as to what we're seeing here. Whereas traditionally, up until sort of mid 2014, all the graphs were fairly similar. We did see a big increase in the number of members that came on board through to late 2016, and then from there we've actually seen sizable jumps in value and volume of defaults that are being registered. Over time, we'll adjust this and we'll start to get smarter with how we're showing the data and try to find some insights. But this is hopefully just to get some ideas percolating in, what does this mean for our customers or for businesses out there in general. Looking at ASIC insolvencies decreased by 18% in comparison to Q1 2018. And they've decreased by 23% in comparison to Q4 2018. So quite interesting. Again, this is probably the one stat that doesn't support the doom and gloom theory that, the small insights reports, the defaults and the judgments that we're seeing, court actions that we're seeing. However, we know that insolvencies will always be sort of 2 to 3 months after a large increase in the number of defaults or court actions. It obviously takes time for a court action to be processed, move on to winding up, and then obviously the next stage from there is administration, for example. So it'd be interesting to see what this looks like 6 months from now, whether we start to see the sort of follow-on effect of those nasty numbers that we looked at earlier. Bankruptcies, all going quite well, except if you are in Queensland. A huge number of bankruptcies that we're seeing there in Q1 2019. Not as big as 2018, but still a huge number compared to the rest of the country. If we're looking nationwide, we're not seeing a huge, we are seeing a sizable decrease versus 2018, which is obviously good to see. Queensland, I sort of struggled to put my finger on exactly why this might be occurring. They haven't really felt the effects of any large natural disasters, for example, like they did after the floods. There was a huge increase in bankruptcies back then. However, it certainly is an eye-opener for anyone doing business with debtors or individuals in Queensland. So that is bringing it to the end. Pretty quick one today. The stats, as I said, fairly doom and gloom aside from the insolvency and bankruptcies, but we know that they tend to have a domino effect on from an increase in defaults and court actions. I think, as I mentioned earlier, waiting for the government to call the election, get through the election, I think that is going to make a big difference to the state of the economy. I feel that once that happens, once that comes and goes, people will kind of get on with doing business. I think the property market is going to continue to be flat or falling for the foreseeable future, according to most property experts out there. And whether the banks start to open up their credit a little bit more. Obviously, the government recently signed into legislation that small business credit project that they've been working on, which should free up funds for small businesses. They are the lifeblood, the engine room of our economy. So it will be interesting to see how all these things, once they come together, get started, stop, etc., what that looks like in the second half of the year. So a few other webinars coming up. Technicalities of PPSR, please do register, jump onto CreditorWatch to the webinars page, or keep an eye out for the invite. I think the one went yesterday potentially, and then there'll be one on Tuesday next week, which is when the webinar is taking place. PPSR Paul will take you through that one. Increase your data sources. So this will be more for our small and medium-sized businesses who use Xero and MYOB. We're going through that in the future. We'll also be touching on the importance of UBO and KYC reporting and how you can access that within CreditorWatch. We'll send out the webinar presentation and recording shortly. If you've got any questions on it, you'd like to see something different, you didn't like what I was talking about, please do include that in the Q&A, the question section in the GoToWebinar control panel, or alternatively, you can email us direct. And as always, please reach out to us. Keep following us on LinkedIn. Jump on our blog as well, so you can see the latest articles that are coming through. In particular, one that has proved very popular of late, which is our Crew Watch videos. Most recent one, Meet the Newbies, who obviously onboarded 12 new staff in February, and we did a really quick interview and asked them something interesting about themselves. So we went through all of the staff there in that. It's been really popular, which is nice. And if you've got ideas for any Crew Watch episodes, please do send them through. Eventually we will run out of clever ones, so we don't want it to get stale, and we like to hear what our customers and listeners and subscribers think about CreditorWatch as well, and if they've got any other good ideas, we're open to that. So one last poll question: did you find today's webinar insightful? As always, please be honest. And if there's anything else you'd like to see in the Small Business Risk Review that you think we might be able to pull, if you're a customer of ours and you're looking at our credit reports and think, oh, why don't they do a section on that particular data element or report, please do include that as well. Thanks for sharing that, and thank you very much for attending, as always, taking the time to join us for our Small Business Risk Review. The next one will be in 3 months. I'll sign off now. Thanks for coming.